In today's video, we have a legendary cryptocurrency trader giving us an update of Bitcoin and altcoins, as Bitcoin is currently getting rejected at 50%, which is leading through to altcoins and the small gains that we're starting to see in some of these altcoins. That special guest I refer to is Michael Pizzino. So check out his links in the description down below. Michael is a leverage trader veteran of over a decade in traditional markets. So he's here to give us his professional opinion of how he is seeing the markets at this point in time. Don't forget to check out the links to Bybit. The Ethereum giveaway has still got another 10 days to go. Link is in the description. And of course, you can check out our free newsletter. It's also at the top of the description. That newsletter is due to come out in the next week. So make sure you stick around for that. So do those annoying YouTube things down below. Like and subscribe with that bell notification icon. Let's dive into the video.
2022 has been a massive year of news, not just for crypto, but around the world. First up, we had the crypto hype from the Super Bowl. Then we had the Russia-Ukraine invasion, commodity price shock and the supply chain issues, and now most recently, the interest rate rise by the Fed. What this has meant for crypto is actually not a whole lot. We had the dump in January, which took place before all of this, and since then, the price has just been grinding sideways. A simple 50% level on the total market cap is actually called the low of this current downswing here. Now, there could be some more down to come, but for now, the total market cap's holding up pretty resilient despite all the fear and uncertainty and sitting in a strong position. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use the charts to help with my trading decisions, both for altcoins and also Bitcoin. But first, thank you for joining me on Jason's channel. I'm your host, Michael Pizzino. Now, everything I say is general information only because I'm not a financial advisor. As always, do your own research. The Bitcoin dominance chart's one I keep a close eye on, not because I can trade it, because it gives me an idea of where the money is flowing, if it's flowing to Bitcoin or if it's flowing to altcoins. This analysis helps to let me know when I need to be shifting my focus, or at least putting some focus on altcoins, because they're likely to have a better run than Bitcoin. There's going to be more energy and momentum in the altcoins when this chart starts to break down. And all I'm looking at here is a couple of 50% levels from the last previous swings. Now I'm on the weekly chart, so it's fairly macro, broader range. And what we're looking at once again is the 50% levels coming in at about 44% and also 43.5%. So as soon as Bitcoin started to find resistance at the 50% levels and then break down from its trend line, that was the trigger for me to let me know that altcoins were probably going to be having a good run, at least some of them. There's always the exceptions that don't, and there's loads that don't do very well. But en masse, we're going to be seeing some better altcoin moves than Bitcoin when this chart's breaking down. So I've zoomed into the daily chart so we can get a clearer picture of what's actually going on. And we can see how Bitcoin dominance found some resistance. And then last week on my YouTube channel, I started talking about the likelihood of this altcoin season as the price did break down from its trend line. So it really can act as a bit of a leading indicator. That's what we're seeing now. But what I'm paying attention to now in the Bitcoin dominance for some very short-term potential of what's coming up is from the top down to the last low. And we can see how there's a likelihood of at least some support on the Bitcoin dominance chart. That's what we've seen over the weekend. So as one potential scenario I'm looking out for is a likely, or at least a somewhat of a likely bounce from here, perhaps finding some more resistance. And to me, that means that perhaps Bitcoin's going to be having a bounce from here. But towards the end of the week, if it doesn't come sooner, maybe the altcoins are going to continue having their strong run while this chart does bleed. So that 42.5% or 42.7% is the price I'm looking out for on the Bitcoin dominance to give me a bit of a leading indicator as to where the energy is going to be, whether it's altcoins or Bitcoin. So as I set myself up for the week, what I'm looking out for is scenario A, we get a bit of a bounce in Bitcoin, then altcoins continue to steal the show, or scenario B, Bitcoin just continues to bleed from here and the altcoins continue to have a decent run. So jumping into Bitcoin and what this actually means, one of the 50% levels I'm looking out for is from the February top down to the January low. And we can see, technically speaking, the price of Bitcoin is still in the strong half of its tool. So as long as it remains above this $39,370, I see that as shorter term accumulation, getting set up likely for another pump. So we can have the scenario when obviously both Bitcoin and altcoins go up. The dominance is just going to show where most of the money is flowing, and we can obviously see that somewhat stabilize as well. So it doesn't take away from what's going on in the individual charts. That's just more of a broad brush top-down approach at looking at what the markets are doing. But looking at Bitcoin in isolation now, if we do find support above this $39,370, it continues to hold here, I'd be looking at this as more likely accumulation that's going to get the price of Bitcoin back to around that 44K and even testing these old tops of around $46,000 as well. So there's a decent window that I'm looking out for in terms of where the price could get to if it does once again hold from here and continue to break up. On the underside of the market, I'm looking at everything beneath where it is now to around the previous lows as somewhat market noise. Just like we've got noise on the bigger picture, this is, if you think about the weekly chart, we're just kind of whipsawing back and forth in some pretty broad ranges. If we're looking at the smaller time frame charts, then that's perhaps what we're going to be seeing between about where it is now, about $42,000, and also the lows at around that $37,500 to $38,000. Just some shorter term noise in amongst some bigger picture noise as well. So any moves in between this range are going to be very short-lived and on the short-term charts, whereas if we get some decent breakouts on something like the daily chart, perhaps we're going to be seeing some bigger windows of opportunity. So on the underside of the market, what that would look like really is a break down below from the lows around that $37,500 to $38,000. Then perhaps the window of opportunity on the downside of the market for me is around to where the trend line is, and perhaps even the previous lows at around $33,000 to $34,000. So the price of $42,000 is an interesting one, and where it comes from is the crash low on the 4th of December. We can just see how it's acting as a fair bit of support and now resistance. So the fact that it's still struggling below that line is just telling me that perhaps the price is going to just go choppy back and forth beneath that particular line, and maybe the 50% level or a bit below. So that's where that window of just kind of sideways grind that I'm talking about comes from. But if the price can get back above that 42K, then it's quite a bullish sign, at least for the short term. And that's why I think if it can get back above there, we're going to be testing these previous tops at the very least. Obviously, there's no guarantees, like there's never any guarantees in the market, but in terms of setting something up for what I'm looking at in terms of potential, that's what it is. Sideways markets, such as the one we're in right now, are obviously quite tricky to navigate because we get lots of false moves both up and down. That's just what we've been seeing, and that's been the nature of the market lately. So there's obviously every possibility that it's just going to continue until we do get that macro breakout on something like the weekly chart. But until then, we just have to do whatever the market's telling us to do, and at the moment, it's telling us that it's grinding, so we're just going to see what kind of breakouts come over the next couple of days, and obviously into the end of the week too. So I want you to keep these tops in mind, February and also March in Bitcoin, and how we've got this trend line overhead and where the current price action of Bitcoin is. Because if we compare this to something like Ethereum, we can see how Ethereum's actually sitting in a stronger position based on this similar chart pattern, or at least support and resistance. Looking at Ethereum, comparing the same tops as we just did on Bitcoin, we have the top in February down to the top in March, and we have our trend line on the chart. So we can see that ETH has broken out of its trend line and now finding some support on the top side. So that's obviously a bullish sign, especially compared to something like Bitcoin, that perhaps we're going to be seeing a better run in ETH if crypto does move up from here. And what I'd be expecting for ETH is for it to test its previous tops, at least around 3,100 and more likely 32 to 3,300 bucks if we do see some more upside momentum. And comparing apples to apples, if we're drawing our 50% level down from the top in February down to the January low, we can also see that ETH is clearly sitting in a strong position. So what I really want to look out for is some upside momentum. We may see some resistance at previous tops because we are in a bit of a grinding market, but if we can kind of hold its ground, get a daily close or so above this particular top here, then perhaps we're going to be seeing some opportunity up to around that 3,300 bucks. In terms of market noise for ETH, if it does hold above around that 2720, I'd be seeing this as a potential accumulation zone, especially if the price does break out from its tops within this particular price zone. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm always thinking ahead as to what could be coming up next. And I'm also thinking about if the market breaks down, what's likely to come up. So above 2720, it's looking pretty good. Obviously, it gets back below there, then I think these previous lows at around 2400 are going to be in danger. I think ETH is probably going to continue to drop to around those lows, especially if we see something like a daily close below that 2720. Jumping back into the total market cap and zooming out that little bit more just so we can keep things in perspective. Overall, 2022 has been the year of grind as we're bouncing back and forth. And as we know, the moves up and down can be really, really short-lived. So it's just really keeping that in mind in terms of whatever it is you're doing in the market. For me anyway, I'm not expecting any major booms in the coming days and even in the coming weeks. If we do see some breakouts from some key overhead levels, then I'll have to change my thinking. But until then, I'm just expecting more of the same with this particular grind that we've been seeing in the market. What that means for me is I have to adjust my risk profile in accordance with what the market conditions are doing. That's what I'm looking at for now. The market has been grinding. Let's see if we can get some bigger breakouts on some larger time frames. That's going to give us the moves that are going to last more than one day, potentially weeks into months. That's if and when we can break out from this range. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. My name is Michael, and there'll be a link for my channel in the description below. And until next time, have fun and get it done. And if you like that catchphrase more than Jason's, leave a comment for him in the comments section below. Until next time, I'll catch you then.